Namaste. I'm Gian Kumar, and today I'm going to speak about tapping the power within. So let's start with what is power. Power is that energy when it gets activated. When a force of energy becomes a field, like when you exercise your physical power to do something in action, your mental power, again, to put it into a actionable flow. But here we are going to talk about spiritual power, something very different. And how spiritual power does not go into action, but it awakens. Because the spirit is already the realized and the supreme and the divine and the enlightened and everything. It need not make any effort, it need not make any action, and it is dormant, passive. What it requires is only awakening. That is why you will always read or hear awakening of the soul, awakening of the spirit, where there is no meditation, no japa, no vipassana, no tai chi, no yoga. Spirit does not require anything. These are all motivational methods coming out of desire to perform something to go towards the spiritual. Not be spiritual, but to go towards spiritual. To go towards the center of your being, the core of your being. And the core of your being is the spirit. Now, again, in order to understand spiritual power, I would suggest that you go into the basics of the subject of life and understand the meaning of spirit, spiritual, spiritualism, spirituality, and how to be spiritual. All these are necessary. Only then you will understand the hidden power within you, the spiritual power, which our ancient sages declared it as thou art that. That power is that divine within you. Aham Brahmasmi, Shivoham, Tattvam Asi, all meaning that you are the divine and unnecessarily you are looking outside for that divine. That divine is revealed from your divinity, from your acts of goodness, from your acts of divine deeds which you do for the nature and for the community, culture, society, etc., etc. So, spiritual power is that power by which you regulate your mind, you manage your mind, and the mind then further on manages the body. So the body is maintained by the mind and the mind is maintained by the spirit, but unfortunately we all know about the body and the mind, but we hardly seem to know anything about the spirit, which is the core being of who you are. Because the mind gets activated only because of the conscious principle. If the conscious principle was not there, the mind would be dead meat. The mind becomes active because of the spirit. And the spirit is that aware conscious energy which activates the mind, by which you become aware of what you observe. What you observe. So, in spiritual power, observance is the ultimate, the sakshi. Observance is your reality. Whatever you observe becomes real. And then, after that, whatever you believe becomes your reality. And this reality differs from one to another. It's a relative reality. It's not the absolute reality. Absolute reality, you can say, is like the sky, like the sun. These are absolute realities which are changeless, but relative reality is what we observe, what we see. And this is why our ancient sages said that as long as you live, you are in an optical illusion, because whatever you are seeing is a leela, is a drama. It's not real. It's relatively real. Why it's relatively real is because it keeps on changing. It keeps on changing from one form into another. And this has been very beautifully explained in the observer effect by science, which says a phenomena changes its reality the moment you observe. So the reality is dependent on the observer, how he observes. So when we come down to power, all other powers are with action. But here the spiritual power is purely through observance. It does nothing else, because it need not do anything. It is the divine. Why should it do anything? Its job is only to observe. So the observer, the divine sitting within, it's called the soul. By spiritualism, the soul is the sakshi. Soul is the witnessing self, which watches and witnesses the mind. And the human mind is supreme because it has the power to witness its own mind, witness its own self, its own thoughts, how it's going, how it's moving, how it's flowing. So you do not do any exercises for this. What you do is you have to constantly, continuously watch your mind, witness your mind. And like if somebody is staring at another person, the other person becomes conscious, the other person becomes shy, and the other person becomes alert in whatever he is doing and starts fumbling or getting alert or changes. Similarly, the mind also becomes shy. The moment it is being washed by the soul, it becomes shy, it becomes conscious, and then it does not allow it to do, if the desire is not too strong, anything wrong. But if the desire is very strong, then it takes over the sakshi and does what it wants without listening to the soul. So this is how the soul is the witnessing self, which witnesses, which does not do anything else. And that is the spiritual power. How do you activate the spirit? How do you activate the spirit contained in the individualized soul of a human being? How do you do that? You do that when your mind is alert, when your mind is under meditative awareness, when your mind is continuously watching your own self all the time, when you are doing, thinking, acting, anything. If you're constantly watching yourself, most of the time you will not do what you should not be doing. That is how the power of the spirit can be awakened, and that awakening activates the mind into the direction that you ultimately want to follow. Namaste.